Hey everybody, my name is Eugene Capon. I am a social media futurist. I have a BA in social media innovation, aka YouTube studies. I actually went to school to become a professional YouTuber, and obviously that didn't work out because I'm here with you guys now. I created a show. I created the first in VR show to ever be ordered like a traditional TV show, and it actually ran for a full 3 seasons. And I gotta tell you, I have this unique ability to see down the road for like what technologies are going to become popular, and then I make things based on those assumptions, and I tend to get them to go viral. I'm the author of the children's book, All the Things You Can Do in the Metaverse. I wanted a technical book for my niece and nephew who are 5 and 6. And I couldn't find anything for them that talked about the metaverse, specifically with Asian representation. And I know my complexion doesn't support that at all, but I thought that was really important for them. So I was like, screw it, I'm a content creator, I'll make it myself. So I did. And I wrote this entire kids book with them as the main characters in it. And they go into the metaverse and they meet a robot, and it's super cute. I co-founded a company called Studio Capon. I had to start it when we sold the show. And then I'm the Global XR Education Advisor for the XRSI, which is a principal advisor for the Metaverse Standards Forum, as well as different agencies for the United Nations. And when I talk about making bets on technology and testing these things, these are actually some great examples. So in the top left-hand corner, that is, I recreated the first level of Super Mario as a 360 animated film. Right below it is me. And I noticed on the internet, and at the time I did this, there weren't any great stock photos of people wearing VR headsets or AR headsets. And so I released a stock set called Purposely Bad Stock VR Photos. And it went viral to the point that other sites were stealing my content, making me accounts, and then reposting everything like I was on their platform. Little Wednesday Addams, when generative AI started to become a thing, or at least accessible to everybody, me and my best friend were like, you know what? We should spend probably 2 months. We should sit down and we should see how fast we can grow an Instagram account using generative AI. And in 8 weeks, we grew it from 1,000 followers to 140,000 followers. And we didn't pay for a single ad. So when I sold the show, I got to fly down to Beverly Hills, and they did what was called a duplication. It was a company called Dube, and they did a photogrammetry scan of my entire body. And so I have this lifelike avatar of myself, which I kind of wish I had lost some weight before I did it. And I was like, you know what? I really want to learn 3D animation to like an expert degree. So I booked out 30 days for myself to learn just C4D. And I removed the head from the body. And I spent a month animating my severed head. So I actually put out a YouTube video called 100 Severed Heads, because I spent a month animating my severed head 100 times. And the video didn't do well, but I had made a bet that Giphy was going to explode. And I was right, because I took all the animations, converted them into GIFs, and put them on that platform, and it did extremely well. And then finally, in the bottom right-hand corner, that is the entrance to the Glitch Theater. Now, when I was approached about doing this show called Glitched, it was so interesting. I joined like the Web3 community in like 2014, and nobody was talking about VR, XR, AR. And so I started following everybody I possibly could on social media that was doing things. And I just happened to be following the right person. This guy had been hired at a company called Altspace. And his job was to put together 16 shows of starting innovative content on their platform. And because I had one of those like verified check marks on Twitter that at the time you couldn't buy, now you can. Everybody in here should probably be verified. He was like, hey, can I take a meeting with you? And I was like, sure, what's up? And he goes, meet me in Altspace. So I did, got in my VR headset. And I was like, so what's going on? He goes, we're putting together 16 shows. I'm like, cool. Who is getting some of the other slots? He goes, well, I'm glad you asked. We have Reggie Watts, Justin Roiland, who is creating a show called Rick and Morty. We have the comedy group Josh, which was Sarah Silverman, Michael, Sarah, Tim, and Eric, and then Bill Nye the Science Guy. And we would love to give you one of the slots. And I was like, oh, well, yes. I'd be crazy not to say yes to this. And then, of course, as soon as we got done with season 1, Altspace went under, and a company called High Fidelity reached out. And if anybody knows the history behind High Fidelity, it was when... Has anybody here read the book Snow Crash? One person? Okay, so if you've heard the term Metaverse, it was actually popularized by the book Snow Crash. And when it came out, it influenced a bunch of futurists to start creating virtual platforms. And one of the people who started one of those virtual platforms was a guy named Philip Rosedale and the VC firm Linden Labs. And they were like, hey, we should start a virtual platform with enrolled economies and that sort of thing. And they created a platform called Second Life. And you can find a ton of documentaries about it. Well, later on, when VR became accessible finally, they were like, you know what? We should rebrand. We should start another platform. We're going to call it High Fidelity. And so when Altspace went under, they reached out to us. And they were like, hey, we'd love for your show to come be on our platform, which to us meant, oh, you probably couldn't afford anybody else on that roster. Just grab that low-hanging fruit. So we did. And they were like, so what's it going to take for you to come over to our platform? We're like, they were a plug and play. You guys are a sandbox. It'll take 60 days of just development time to build something on your platform. And they went, we would love to buy a show from you. We'd love to buy a full season from you. And my reaction was, fuck off. Because nobody buys a in VR show. And they said, we'd love to be the first. And we went ahead and checked. And there was only 2 other properties that were kind of in the same niche. One of those was The Foo Show by Will Smith, which was a crowdfunded show. And the other one was called Gunter's Universe, which is a nod to the book Ready Player One. And he was just some guy doing it from his van. And so we were like, let's do it. And so we became the first in VR show to ever be ordered like a traditional TV show. And when I say these did extremely well, I mean these did extremely well. So 14 million, 150 million, and that's a lowball estimate. 20 million, 14 million. And that 14 million is only what we can track because, again, people were stealing our content and reposting it. Same with the Marvel babies. So if you Googled Marvel babies or pop culture babies, you'll actually find a lot of our work under the title of Toph Magof, because we didn't want anyone to know it was us. And we got write-ups in like Board Panda and a bunch of other news articles. So let's talk about the history of the internet a little bit. And the other day, I was laying in bed with my partner next to me, and I was going over these slides, and I was trying to remember the first time I ever saw the internet. And it had to be probably about 1994. It was a couple days before Christmas. And my dad, who's Canadian, my mom's an American, and he is one of the kindest, most hardworking people I've ever met in my life. And he put himself through med school, opened up a practice, and he had a patient who could not pay his medical bills. So instead of making him pay the medical bills or sending him to collections, the guy traded him for a computer. And he brought it home a few days before Christmas, and it was unwrapped. And he gave it to me and my siblings, and we opened it up, and I was like, "What is this?" And we dragged the box over to an oak desk that was right next to the phone line, and we set it up and turned it on, and we connected to the internet for the first time, and it took probably an hour. Just that super annoying. Well, the first thing he did was he went to the White House website, and he pulled it up on this old green and black screen computer, like super old school. And my mom, who had just seen Superman 2, and I don't know if you've seen that movie, but in the movie, the bad guys hack the US government and steal a bunch of money. And so when she came out and saw this webpage of the US government, she thought me and my dad had hacked the US government and threw a fit. And so it's influenced me to be that voice of reason within technology for my family, and just be like, "No, Mom, it's a scam. Don't send them money." So let's take a step back and go over the history of the internet for a minute, and you'll understand where I'm going with this. So in 1969, we had the first computer-to-computer transmission. And that set up this thing called the ARPANET that ran for a number of years. And during the pre-modern internet, we went from this process called packet switching. It was just sending information from one computer and to the next, to the next, to the next, until it finally reached its destination. It's super inefficient. And eventually we developed TCP IP protocol standards, which means, .coms, .govs, URL full names, and it was way more efficient. And in 1993, the US government passed a bunch of regulations that basically allowed commercial content to be on the internet. And with this, it opened up the free market, and it started the first generation of the internet, Web 1. We called it the information age because you could basically only read, right? Maybe there were some forums where you could leave comments, but it's mostly what you could read. And then in 2005, we had this thing where we had this mass adoption of social media. And because we had this mass adoption of social media, it moved us from the first generation of the internet into the second generation of the internet. And that is actually where we are right now. And so as we're looking down the pipeline, we're looking at Web 3. And as you can see, we're not there, or at least not for another couple of years, probably 5 or 6 years, actually. And yet all of us are hearing this term, the metaverse. And what does that mean? Oh, if anybody's interested, Web 4 is going to be called the symbiotic age, and we'll probably be focused on human augmentation and robotics and flying cars, which I am really excited for. So the metaverse, what the fuck is it? Well, right now, for probably most people in this industry, when you hear the metaverse, you're probably hearing, yeah, that guy Mark Zuckerberg is building one, right? And that could not be further from the truth. So when Mark Zuckerberg was like, hey, we're building a metaverse, what he was actually talking about is we're building this addition onto the internet. And he was building a platform called High Fidelity, or Horizons. And unfortunately, we live in a culture where people only read headlines. And so what quickly happened was this rampant misinformation of what the metaverse actually is. I had to change this meme a little bit because child abuse isn't funny. And I think Superman can probably take it over Robin. So the metaverse is a byproduct of the third generation of the internet. And it's one of the requirements for us to actually have the metaverse in the first place. And as we're looking at Web3 or the immersive age, We have the entire internet, which we all use. And then within it will be the immersive internet. And then within that is the metaverse. And so when we're talking about the immersive internet, we're looking at different modes of technology and how we actually interact with that new generation of the internet. And so we're going to be doing that through these three things: mixed reality, augmented reality, and virtual reality. And so augmented reality, if anybody's played like the newest version of Pokemon Go, because when Pokemon Go first released, it wasn't augmented reality, even though they were telling everybody it was AR. It was actually using the gyroscope in the phone to figure out the localized position of where the Pokemon needed to sit. And it wasn't until it actually had in-camera tracking that it counted as augmented reality. And augmented reality is when you have visual overlays in front of you, or at least from a visual sense. Augmented reality can actually be an augmentation of any one of your senses. And one of my favorite hypotheticals is you could get a chip implanted in your tongue that made everything taste like ice cream, and that would be a version of augmented reality. And I am waiting for that, because everything that is healthy just doesn't taste great. And I really like Rocky Road. So following up from that would be mixed reality. And unlike augmented reality, where it's just an overlay, mixed reality is where you can actually like create and touch the visuals that are over it. You get a sense of connectiveness, or it becomes more immersive. So instead of just being an overlay, you can actually interact and it can go behind things. And so I'm really excited for the expansion of like my desktop eventually, where I can just have 6 screens and not have to pay for them. I just have like one VR headset or AR headset and watch it all. And then finally, virtual reality is when you are put inside of a virtual world and it's fully encompassed. There is a very smart man by the name of John Ratoff, and he created this thing called the 7 layers of the metaverse. And so when we talk about the metaverse, what we're actually talking about is an entire ecosystem of different technologies that are working together to create this immersive interoperability and persistent world within like virtual headsets or even on regular screens. And basically the way that it runs is you have at the very bottom, you have infrastructure. And that is, how are we moving data from one place to another? That's, 5G, that's Wi-Fi, that's, 6G, which is something we need because moving realistic graphics through the internet is still a pain point. And it is especially a pain point for anybody who doesn't live in a major metropolitan city. So if you live like out in the middle of the country, internet's going to suck. You're not going to have a good time. And if you are trying to view one of these virtual worlds and it's all streaming into a headset, so you're like on a social platform, what's going to happen? The quality is going to suffer and the frame rate is going to drop, and it is going to make people sick. And we call this VR sickness. And the reason this happens is because you have your inner ear fluid and you have your visual receptors. And when these two do not align, say you're, reading something in the car, not looking off into the distance, and then your inner ear fluids feels the movement, but the book in front of you doesn't, that creates a disconnect. And when you have a differential between the two and they don't align, your body goes, hey, this is a problem. I need to let you know. And then therefore, I'm going to make you feel sick as a way of telling you something is wrong. And so for that to work appropriately, not only do you need, high-end textures, but you also need high enough frame rates. And that is kind of like 60 frames a second is what we usually advise for people creating virtual worlds. And if the world is too high textured and it's not fast enough, that creates an issue, that creates slowdown. So if we want to fix that, you either need faster internet or you need to make everything look like Minecraft. And that's why you have so many of these virtual worlds who look like they're made with Legos. After that, you have the human interface, which is your mobile devices, you have your smart glasses, your wearables, your haptics, your gesture, voice, and neural. And I'm really excited for neural. I consider that to be a Web4 technology, just because there is so much that's going to be happening with that down the road. Specifically, being able to read thoughts, and that's great for, say, if someone's in a coma and you want to communicate with them, or maybe they're a paraplegic and you want them to have access to the internet or access to different technologies that'll make their life easier. Mobile, we all have one. Smart glasses, I mean, that's basically any headset. And of course, gesture and voice. I mean, who owns an Alexa right now or a Google Home? See a few hands. Makes your life a lot easier, right? I'm a fan of making it so if somebody shows up to my Ring doorbell, it makes everything play like Skyrim. Spatial computing, that's those 3D engines, that's AR, VR, multitasking, user interface, and then geospatial mapping. And so what geospatial mapping is if you are, say, on Snapchat, and you want an AR lens to only work within a certain area, you can actually go to their ad platform, mark off an area, say like a Taylor Swift concert, where a lot of people are going to be in that area. You can pay for the rights to be in that area, and then you can reach a whole bunch of people who are like packed in. And because they're looking to create content, they're going to have access to those AR filters. And so that's a really cheap way to maximize the potential of your ad placement. So if you have like a really fun AR game or something that's kind of related to what they're doing, and yet you're sneaking your own branding in there, I mean, that's a really fun way to do it. The creator economy, if you're creating ads or if you're working on experiences or you're working with, say, commerce, I think this is a real opportunity for you guys. And I'm actually going to get to it very soon. Discovery, that's your normal ad networks, social curation, rating, store, AI agents. Artificial intelligence is part of the metaverse in a big way, and it can actually be included into various amounts of this platform. Then there's experience, which is like going to the actual virtual worlds and seeing what it has to do. Now, I skipped decentralization because I wanted to say that best for last. Decentralization, for most people, they call it Web3. And Web3, what Web3 actually means is third generation web technologies, not the decentralization aspect of the metaverse. And so that's a little bit of misinformation that's actually very populated and within like Twitter spaces. And so when we talk about decentralization, that's blockchain, that's cryptocurrency, that's NFTs. And we use that as a way of transferring digital assets from one virtual world to another. And that creates that level of interoperability that's actually needed. Now, this is actually something I created. I created and wrote a paper called the Immersive Internet Scaling Model. And I was having trouble explaining to people why a virtual world was not a metaverse. And that seems to be like one of those big touch points that marketing agencies and people writing articles tend to be wrong about consistently. And the reason for that is at the very bottom level of this chart, you have your virtual world, you have your land, you have your video game level, right? And when you're in those virtual worlds, you can usually go from one virtual world to another that's within the same platform. So say you're in Roblox, you have different options of going to different virtual levels, right? All right, you have the platform level that writes all the rules for all those virtual worlds that are below it. So when you have a major update to the platform, it makes all those major updates for all the virtual worlds that are within the platform. And we often call that a subverse, a virtual world cluster, or a meta galaxy. And then finally, we have the metaverse at the internet level. And that's why if you've ever heard the phrase, the metaverse, there's only one, this is why. Because you want those platforms to be able to talk to each other. And if you do not have interoperability, which means those platforms can't talk to each other, you do not have the metaverse. You have what's called a walled garden. Now, the metaverse, as we should all know by now in this talk, it is a byproduct of the third generation of the internet, which means it requires us to be in the third generation of the internet, which we're not currently at yet. So when people say, hey, we don't know what the metaverse looks like, we're still building it, well, that's half true, right? Because if we didn't know what it was going to look like, we wouldn't know what we were building towards in the first place. And so that's not necessarily true. We have a good sense of where it's going, and we know why we're building there. And we know why we've been building towards that direction for how many years? I mean, when Facebook renamed its company to Meta, it was basically going, hey, in the social media life cycle, we've hit critical mass, which means statistically, we can't really onboard any more users. And since we can't go up anymore, we have to pivot and we have to go sideways. And so them renaming their company from Facebook to Meta was a direct play, knowing that this is going to be the next generation of the internet. And in comparison, if they were to do that, say in like 2005, they would have named their company Social Media. If they had done it in 1993, they would have named their company Website, right? So we need not just interoperability, which means transferable digital assets, but we also need persistence. And that means that I can show up to your virtual world, I can grab a digital knife, carve my name in a tree, leave for 6 months, come back and still find it there. And that is one of those big things that everybody in the industry is still trying to work out, because that does take a massive amount of computing power to keep regulated and persistent. The next thing is transferable virtual tokens. So that's your avatars, that's your skins, that's your emotes, that's whatever somebody has bought in a marketplace, put within a digital wallet, and then move it from one place to another, which means we need to put a large amount of focus on going, hey, if this token means this in this world, what does that mean in this other world? If you're buying, say, like a skin specifically for a game that gives you, plus 20% health, what does that mean when you're in a completely social environment where you don't have that sort of metrics? And so that's one of the things that we're currently working on figuring out. We need interoperable avatars, and that might just be Ready Player Me, which I think is a great concept, especially since I had the same concept. I pulled a bunch of developers. They said this would never work, so I didn't do it. And then 5 years later, I saw that they took an investment of $50 million, and I'm kind of mad about it. And then finally, a virtual world is not a metaverse. I cannot stress this enough because I'm correcting people all day. And I have friends who are in Twitter Spaces nonstop, and they'll just like text me like, dude, this guy has it wrong. You better lay down the law. So what does the opportunity mean for all you digital marketers? And this is where you guys really need to take notes. So back in 93, we were telling businesses, hey, you guys need a website. And they went, nah, we got a brick and mortar store. We don't need this thing. Well, let somebody else try it. And then 2005 rolls around. We were like, hey, your business should probably be on social media. Like, I don't need it. I got a website. I got the brick and mortar store. And now when we talk to companies, they're like, dude, I'm on social media. I got the website. We got rid we got rid of the store, the physical store, because we don't need it anymore. We're completely online. And now we're going to be, hey, you should probably have a virtual world for your product, for your business, for your environment, for your fan club. And I have a feeling a lot of companies are going to be like, nah, I don't know about that. And then eventually history will be like, man, I wish I had gotten one of these right when it came around because we missed the boat on websites and social media. Like, we waited too long. I wish I had a time machine. I wish I could have gone back and got those things. Well, I'm telling you right now is that opportunity to get in, to start figuring out how you're going to be an early adopter and how your business, how your community, how your fan club is going to be using this technology for you. And part of that greatest opportunity is actually because of these two. So on the left, this very spiffy man with a epic beard, that's John O'Keefe. He is a Nobel Prize winning neuroscientist. And in the 70s, he figured out that we have these things called GPS cells. And GPS cells are your evolutionary response to being able to find your way back home at the end of the day. So when you get up and you get in your car, your GPS cells, they fire off. When you drive to the edge of the block, they fire off. When you get to the highway, they fire off. When you get to work, they fire off. And that is so you can get home. And so our ancestors, we developed these GPS cells so we could figure out how to get back to our hut, our longhouse, our cave, whatever your ancestral dwelling was. And later on, UCLA ran a study with mice on the effects of GPS cells in virtual environments. And what we found out was, even though we have this evolutionary response to being able to find our way a physical environment, it didn't account for virtual environments, which means when you're in a virtual environment, those GPS cells fire off more frequently and randomly, which means you have up to a 30% higher memory retention when you're in VR. So if you are spending, trying to get 9 adverts in front of somebody to create a sale, if you do it in VR, you only need 6. If you want to learn a new language, do it in VR, you'll do it a third faster. Learn a new instrument, third faster. And it differs for everybody, but 30% is kind of what we're looking at. And so right now, there is a community of bleeding edge enthusiasts. And what that means is there are these people who are going, I'm in Web3 for the long haul. I know it's going to be the future. WAG me, which means we're all going to make it, even though I don't think that's true. And I've heard some ridiculous plans. There was an NFT project where all these people bought into these little gizmo-like PFPs, and one of them was golden. And that person, whoever minted the golden version of their NFT project, got like $500,000. And so when I saw this, I joined one of their Twitter spaces, and one of these people was like, hey, this is what they did for the community. And I went, so did you all get paid or just this one guy? And they went, well, was like, so you're a victim of the influencer folly, which is the top 1% is seen 90% of the time. And so your view of said project is the 1% affecting 90%, even though that's not true. And he was like, yeah, I guess. I'm like, okay, so we know that these communities are valuing ownership of their communities. There is a misquoting of community versus customers. Like, a lot of these projects are saying, come join my community, we're all in it together. And what they really mean is, I want you to buy my product, continue to try to pump it, So we all make money, wink, wink. And unfortunately, the value in these projects need to make sense for everybody. And so I really liked it when Starbucks decided to take one of their programs, they put it on the blockchain. They converted hundreds of thousands of people to Web3 users overnight without making it a big deal. Reddit, if they tried to sell a product that was called an NFT, they wouldn't have done it. But it was the same thing. They just called it a digital collectible, and they sold out in like 2 days. And so there's this weird stigma around the phrasing of an NFT right now that if you call it anything else, but it's the exact same thing, you'll probably do a lot better. And so probably part of that is NFT enthusiasts to me are probably the same as CrossFitters or vegans. Like, how do you know somebody's a vegan or a CrossFitter? They'll tell you. Same with Web3 people. If you're going to go into one of these communities and launch a product, I would say cross-pollination is fantastic. Have a little bit of meme culture in it and just take a look what's being successful. I wouldn't say copy it, but make it your own. And make sure that all your tokenization or tokenomics makes sense for the community and customer set that you're actually building. If you're going to leverage other communities, I would try to pick something that's within the same vein or same chain as you, because they already have pre-built communities. And the weird thing about Web3 communities is they're very like chain specific. Like if somebody is all about, Ethereum, they're going to be all about Ethereum inside and out. If they're all about like Hero Coin, they're going to be all about, Hero Coin projects or Doge or, PayPay is kind of the newest one that's popped up. You want to have a plan from the very start and make it available. You want to show your entire roadmap so that they know exactly what they're buying into, what they're getting in return, and how it's going to properly execute. And they understand that you as a creator need to get paid for your project and to run the community. It becomes a full-time job. And that's just part of the expectation at this point. And of course, you need to tweet good morning every day because, that's how you create value apparently. My name is Eugene Capon. You can find me at hightechinfluencer.com. You can find me on Twitter. And if I do have a newsletter that releases every other week where I cover some sort of social media topic or, I share my thoughts on some sort of evolutionary new change in the social media or internet world. The last paper I wrote, I believe, was how to not let your Zoom meetings suck, make it look like a professional YouTuber. And it's just 20 tips of how to make your video not suck. And right now, I got to tell you, the best one is just to put the camera at eye level. That way you don't have a big waddle. Anyway, I'm here to take questions. Thank you. Questions. Whoever asks a question first gets 20 brownie points. Good.
Oh, thank you, Eugene, for your technology information. I'd like to know that for the VR, AR, do you have some kind of called the XR or
HR?
XR?
Oh, so what we have is XR, which is which means extended reality, and it's the over-encompassment of AR, augmented reality, VR, virtual reality, and MR, mixed reality. And so if you're going to talk about the extension of reality or the overlay of reality in what I like to call meat space, because we're all made out of meat, that's what I would use. XR is. Yeah. My pleasure. Man, you're embarrassing me, guys. Okay.
Okay.
Don't make me look bad. It's being recorded.
Yeah. Hello. Is this working? Yeah. Okay. So I don't have an intelligent question because a lot of that for me was honestly over my head.
Sorry.
And I guess one of my questions is like I hear your warning, and I want to. It's valid. This idea of we didn't know we needed a website, we didn't know we needed social, and we don't know that we're going to need this metaverse thing that is just bizarre to me. So, what would you suggest might be like the for dummies version, like for real dummies, to understand the basic constructs? What would be a great place to start?
Okay. Okay. So again, this is what I would explain to everybody. So you have the entire internet, and with every new generation, you get this thing added to it. So before it was websites you could read. And in Web 2, it was websites where you were the content creator. Everything in there is easily accessible and made by somebody. And so we have all these social media companies that were like, you know what? I don't want to be a newspaper. I want all my users to be the writers. And this was a major cultural shift for everybody. And now that we're looking at Web3, it's going to be, hey, websites exist. We have all these extended amounts of reality that are coming down the pipeline. Everybody here who's using it right now is technically on the bleeding edge, where even though these are third generation web technologies, you can interact with them right now. They just haven't hit mass adoption yet. And so when they hit mass adoption, it'll be part of the third generation internet. And the thing to understand is video game culture has really impacted the shift. And so right now we have hundreds and thousands of people who are using these video game platforms like Fortnite. And in Fortnite, you can now get onto Unreal. You can build your own virtual world. You can bring in assets from different places that you've won from other games and whatnot, and you can make it part of your own experience. And so when we're talking about Web3, we're talking about the interaction level, which is the virtual world, where you are going to be surfing these virtual worlds the same way you would surf a modern web page. But instead of hitting a URL on a web page, you're going to be opening a door in VR and walking through it. And so in that aspect, it's not really different. It's just the mode of transportation in which the content is being delivered to you is changing.
Okay, so that was great. And I'm thinking about a couple of random conferences that I was at where I was learning about, for example, there's a company out there called Modern Mirror. And it's a way for women to create, in a retail environment, a hologram of herself so she doesn't have to go through the pain of changing rooms. Women, you got me. We hate those things. And also the idea of, eventually on a website or maybe in a metaverse, it sounds like I could walk into and try on as a meta human these clothes. Is that an example? And I have one more, and then you can answer, and I'll shut up.
Sure.
I was at an AdWorld conference, and they were talking about how a campaign for a luxury retailer clothing. I think it was like, I don't know, it was like Louis Vuitton or something, some brand tour type company. They're selling clothes that you would wear, you could rent for a social media photo that would be like put on like a paper doll for your social media. And so you'd pay for it, but you'd never take it home and wear it. Like it was just for your social. So it looked like I was wearing Louis Vuitton at Playland and then it was gone. So like, can you relate? For what I'm trying to understand is
100%.
how are we monetizing this? Because like I think there's a lot of business owners in the room. Like, how does this get monetized, and why do we need it for our experiences for our customers? And are these some business examples? Like I might want to buy your Louis Vuitton because I can't afford the real thing. I'll buy the Metaverse thing, and I might want to create a Metaverse store experience because I don't have bricks and mortar, and people are still human and want experiences. Like, what's that connection?
Yeah. So what you're actually talking about in your earlier example is part of the immersive internet, while VR is mainly the metaverse. So you have the regular internet, you have the immersive internet, where we talk about IoT, spatial computing, and overlays of yourself. So say you go into a Louis Vuitton store, you stand in front of a mirror, it scans your body, and it creates a virtual reflection of you wearing, whatever you choose. That would be a form of augmented reality because it is taking a point of input value and making a change to it in some way. And so this might be supported by artificial intelligence, and you might have a standing account where you have a digital twin. So back in the day, I had to go into a booth that had 300 cameras, and then all took a photo of me all at the exact same time to create a duplicate of me. And I don't think that's going to be the case anymore, just because we're getting so much better at real-time environment changing. So if we're talking about from a business standpoint, it could be, hey, I want a previs of what I look like in this dress so I know it's about me, and then I'm going to have a better informed purchase. If I'm a business, I don't want every single person to try on the same outfit, possibly damaging the merchandise, which means I don't have to have extra copies around, which means I can save on damaged goods, which means I'm going to have a less of a loss leader, right? If we're going to take that example and move it into, say, tokenized assets, it could be, hey, I'm a fan of Gucci or Prada, and I'm going to go into their virtual store, and I'm going to want to go through, and now because everything's virtualized, I can see every product they've ever made, versus if I go to a physical store, they might just have that one collection, right? And so if I go through and I'm like, hey, I really like this bag from 1985, I can't find it anywhere. But if you want to buy the NFT version of it, we will, and it's probably a lot more expensive. You can get the physical copy remade, a virtual environment copy of it, so you can take it with you as an accessory to wherever you decide to go. And so not just the physical version of you has access to that merchandise, also the digital twin version of you has access to that merchandise. And I really think that's part of the selling proposition that we're talking about here today. Okay.
Yeah, really interesting hearing like the examples you're talking about now. So personally, I feel like I really like the slide about, people were hesitant about website and social media and now this. So, but I feel like to get into this, it would require even more investment and development.
Mm-hmm.
So companies would probably be even more hesitant to move into the space. Do you agree with that? And then also like, what would be the risk of like being a late adopter if we are waiting it out and see how it goes first for other people?
Sure. Anytime we talk about a new platform being absorbed, there's always that first mover advantage, right? So say a new social media platform pops up, we go, hey, there's nobody using it. I'm going to take all my content, I'm going to move it over to platform XYZ and build up my following there, because there's not really a lot of content creators there. I can build up my influence really quickly by being a first moving creator, first moving advantage creator. And so when we talk about these virtual worlds, you're absolutely right. We are still investing in these platforms. And that's why when I say Web3 is 5, 6, 7 years away, that's because we're still making those advancements. That's because we're still making those investments into these technologies. And I've seen some really cool stuff that I can't talk about that's coming down the pipeline, which I wish I could, because I know it would make you a believer. But there are some really cool things coming down the road. I can't wait to talk to you about them. And unfortunately, this is one of those things where you're going to have to just trust me. I know what I'm talking about. It's coming. It's going to be available in the next 2 years, I believe. And when that happens, it's going to change the game in terms of what is available right now versus what is possible very soon. And so, yeah, first mover advantage. And if you're late to the game, it's a lot of noise and you get, less likely to be seen. And that typically is the same with anywhere on the internet. Can we throw in the box? No, oh.
Thanks. I've just got a question around like the mental impact of the metaverse. So say, for instance, it's a big concern for myself because I have an 11-year-old daughter. And so when taking photos, she uses a lot of filters. And it's concerning to me because now we're creating, like catfish. You see somebody that's not the true person that they actually are. So I'm just thinking, as we move into the metaverse, how are we going to kind of manage that and deal with the mental aspect and impact that it has on people, where it's basically getting catfish because that's not truly who the person is. And we see all these filtered pictures where people say, "Oh, you look so beautiful," and all this. And then the reality is that that's not truly what they look like. And now we've got this kind of separate persona that this is beautiful and I am not, because I have to use filters to become this, what people perceive as beautiful.
Yeah, in terms of AI and like things like deepfakes, we actually need a lot of regulations fast and now. It really needs to be a rule that, say, deepfake pornography should not be allowed unless you have explicit consent from, the person that you're transferring their likeness to. You should not be allowed to use artificial intelligence or generative AI in political ad campaigns because it creates misinformation. And when we're talking about, sharing your likeness, I mean, that's going to be part of every version of the internet. Okay? I mean, if we haven't solved it by now, I don't think we're going to be able to solve it in the next one, right? There's always going to be somebody looking to use this technology inappropriately to take advantage of others. It's just going to happen. I'm sorry, there's not really an answer to that. We can make, regulations. We can make impactful outcomes. We can try to educate people on, how to look for signs that this might not be a real person. And that's kind of the best we can do, or at least right now. We got 47 seconds left.
Oh,
what do you got? No, come on.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, last one. Oh, sorry.
Hi, right here. I want to know, going back to the business side of things, what are the opportunities that you see in Metaverse? And that is based on, I was watching a Sam Altman interview. He was saying that the reason why ChatGPT is so popular was because it was 100 times better than the next product. And yet, I try Metaverse, all of these different things. We have kids that play around with games in it. And to be honest with you, at this point, I'd rather just play a computer game that has better graphics and won't make me dizzy and give me vertigo when I put on a headset. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what do you see? How do you monetize it in the next 7 years, if not longer?
Yeah, so I think the question from you really is, what is the opportunity that the metaverse provides that we are comparatively have right now, right? And so when I talk about the metaverse, I'm talking about 5, 6, 7 years down the road when the technology is better. So it's kind of an apples and oranges comparison because you're trying to put today's standards versus what everything is going to be. Now, if I gave you a $10,000 PC and the best internet you can get and a Varjo headset that has human eye resolution tracking, you're not going to get sick. You're going to have those graphics, but the price point needs to come down for the everyday consumer, and it's currently not there yet. And so as time goes by, all those really high-end products that are currently needed to create the perfect ideal scenario for what the metaverse has to offer, it needs to come down in price, and it's going to take some time to get there. And that's why when we talk about, the metaverse being 5, 6, 7 years, that's kind of why. I mean, we just don't have the technology ready to make it 100% complete. We're still working on it. We're still getting investments into these technologies. But when we get there, it'll be the best opportunity you've ever had, probably, or at least for the next 20, 30 years. Last question. Oh, you're done? Cool. All right. Thank you very much, guys.